It is simultaneously amazing and heartening to see how many of our famous sci-fi and fantasy movies have relied on miniatures for their special effects. By the time Blade Runner bombed at the box office, the use of miniatures in movies had been well established. Close-up shots of tiny models were popularized by World War II and Godzilla films, and honed to a science by Star Wars and the motion-controlled camera rigs that Douglas Trumbull and his special effects crew pioneered. It's no surprise then that Trumbull was behind the flying cars or spinners in the 1982's Blade Runner. Though some shots featured a full-size prop, many of the in-flight and zoomed-in shots were of a small replica. Trumbull's masterstroke is the use of bright flaring lights on the miniature spinner, partially obscuring the model while also creating a sense of dynamic cop car scale. With Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, it was 1984, and people were gullible, easily tricked into thinking that Indy and company were really tearing through tunnels in a minicart while other carts full of bloodthirsty cultists gave chase. But the majority of that sequence was done with action figure-sized models of both the good and the bad guys in 10-inch long cars. As with most miniature shots, the trick, apart from the painstakingly detailed models, was to slow the camera's speed to match the smaller scale. For many shots, Industrial Light and Magic jerry-rigged a Nikon F3 still camera, cutting its motor speed by 2/3. In retrospect, the Abyss was packed with minuscule versions of massive vessels. This was 1989, long before Titanic and Avatar gave James Cameron the kind of clout that could launch 1,000 full-scale ships. So most of the vehicle shots featured models. For example, the 1/8 scale mini-subs that, like Blade Runner's spinners, were studded with working lights and that also housed projectors to display pre-filmed images of the actors against the inside of the domed cockpit windows. Even visuals that audiences might assume were breakthrough CG work, such as the iridescent alien vessels, were simply detailed models, many of them shot moving through smoke to simulate underwater murk. Some miniature effects lose their magic once you know what to look for. That's not the case with the swift but completely mind-boggling nighttime shot in 1989's Back to the Future Part 2, when the flying DeLorean comes in for a landing with no visible cuts between the car hitting the road and the actors piling out. The shot starts with a 3-foot-long scale model which swoops in and touches down. It passes behind a street light, which masks a split-screen effect, and the car emerges on the other side of the pole as a full-size vehicle, part of a completely different but perfectly matched shot. Roland Emmerich's strangely gleeful detonation of the White House, a 1/12 scale miniature, gets all the glory, but the real highlight of Independence Day's Oscar-winning visual effects comes during the on-screen carnage of New York City when a wall of flame is shown rolling through the streets. It's a dazzling trick of forehead-slapping simplicity. The model's cityscape was tilted sideways with downward-aimed cameras perched above. So as the fire bloomed upwards, climbing the miniature environment, it looked as though it was speeding laterally. The final effect is as physics-defying as an alien bombardment should be. Though Peter Jackson and his Weta Workshop special effects company later tried to coin the term bigatures in relation to giant miniatures, James Cameron and DreamQuest Images might have beat him to it, first with a 70-foot-long nuclear submarine model in the Abyss, and then with a number of large models in Titanic, including a 1/8 scale replica of the titular ship's stern jutting up from the water after the vessel has snapped. Positioning seaborne extras in front of the sprawling miniature allowed Cameron to avoid a composite green screen shot. Other scenes used various other partial or full replicas, with the biggest complete miniature of the ship stretched 45 feet, or the 1/20 scale that you see here featured. All the Lord of the Rings movies employed so-called bigatures, a term coined by the Weta Workshop model maker to describe the 9-foot-high miniature of Barad-dûr Castle, home of Sauron, and the perch of the villain's baleful all-seeing eye. Nearly every memorable environment, including Helm's Deep, made extensive use of models, but Wada's crowning achievement in miniatures is arguably the city of Minas Tirith, seen here in 2003's The Return of the King, which stands 14 feet tall at its highest tower and sprawls some 30 feet wide, with as many as 1,000 houses dotting its bulk. The besieged city is often shown surrounded by a CGI landscape, forming the basis of composite shots, and portions of it were hyper-detailed enough to stand up to extreme close-ups. Christopher Nolan is famously averse to all digital visual effects, opting for air-launched miniature Batmobiles or tumblers in Batman Begins, and a memorable mid-air multiplane stunt in The Dark Knight Rises. But maybe the best, most deceptive practical effect sequence in Nolan's Batman trilogy happens during the underground chase scene in 2008's The Dark Knight. The tumbler slams into a garbage truck, then swings around, skidding and speeding down the tunnel. The car, truck, and tunnel are all one-third scale models built by New Deal Studios, with motion-controlled cameras zipping along the tracks alongside and behind the action. For the climatic explosion of the mountaintop hospital, actually a figment of one character's dreaming imagination, in 2010's Inception, Christopher Nolan once again tapped the miniature builders at New Deal Studios. The crew built this giant 1/6 scale model topping 40 feet, mountain included, and then blew it up. But that was just the rehearsal. New Deal rebuilt and remounted the miniature and destroyed it again in a 5.5-second long detonation sequence, filmed at 72 frames per second, 2 to 3 times normal filming speed, with the shots later slowed down to match the scale. When disaster movies like Deep Impact in 2012 have demonstrated menacing, purely virtual tidal waves, nothing comes close to the devastating tsunami sequence in 2012's The Impossible. To simulate the initial impact of the 2004 tsunami on the Thai resort Magicungumb, created a handful of one-third scale bungalows, as well as the surrounding trees and nearby pool that we see here. The crew then dumped 1 million liters of water on their creations, creating a 1.5 meter high wave. The CG artists added poolside umbrellas and additional trees, but the perceived scale of the destruction included the way the miniature buildings are left shattered and skeletal, and is more convincing than its bigger budget equivalents. All these special effects that have used famous miniatures are now, as you guessed, in museums. Whether they're in England or America, they still draw audiences like the museums dedicated to wardrobe and makeup. Here we see the scale on a green screen on set, but this is soon to be transported to a museum for an exhibit, like other movies have done here. Entire apartment houses on exhibit. The interior of a hospital scene shown in its real size with the hand intervening in the picture here, just like a doll's house. So these all are taken from the stage, entire neighborhoods, entire periods of history, and once they've been taken out of the studio, where the prop makers have walked up and down the streets, they're then put with film clips of the actual movies. Here, Independence Day, showing the alien destruction of the White House, so that you can reimagine the movie. You can see Lord of the Rings miniatures, and then they'll cut to the shot in the movie to show what you saw and imagined was full size. And they'll take entire cities like New York here, spread out in the museum, and then show the aftermath of some destruction that was done on the set. Or they'll take just a small house from the Munsters here and show it on exhibit and from the TV show. But it all comes back to the Future, that DeLorean making that landing, that small model that we imagined was full size. All this, among other exhibits in the miniature museums, are another drawing card for people who create art for the movies.